Whole sports all plays. Yeah. Whole sports all plays. Whole sports all plays. 365, we making a plays. You talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety topics living the same. All presentation, sports information. Hitting the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. Whole sports all plays.
Whoa, what's up, guys? We're here. It took a while. What's up? I know I've missed like 3 weeks in a row, man. Welcome back to Loose Lugs. Dustin took care of us last week. I appreciate that, man.
Not a problem.
Here for another episode. We're gonna split it tonight, so we've got not much to talk about in NASCAR. There's not much yet. We're getting close. Other than predictions, which is kind of a bad idea when you're going into a car that has no statistical data on a racetrack bigger than Charlotte. So I'm going to hold off on that. Dustin last week brought you guys a lot of the news with, the last minute changes. There's not a lot going on. I will say I did some research on the car of tomorrow and the Gen 6 car, and the teams that won the championship that first year for both, 48. Jimmy Johnson won both seasons. I found it interesting that a Roush Fenway racing car pushed him both years. In 2008, it was Carl Edwards. In 2013, it was Matt Kenseth. I don't think Roush is there. I don't think we're going to see that. But I think Stewart Haas will be that team that pushes hard for the Ford campaign. Where are you sitting with that? What are you feeling out for Ford?
I'm with you. I mean, Stewart Haas, the past few years has been like the flag bearer for Ford. Roush hasn't really, any Ford teams other than Stewart Haas has really give anyone else a run for their money. And if previous year's anything to go on, I mean, we're going into a new car, so it might be different. Maybe Stewart Haas gets all the cogs worked out. Can you hush, dog?
The dog wants to speak.
He really does. He wants some of his input put in. But I think Stewart Haas next year is going to be a good pick to give the previous defending champion of Kyle Larson a run for his money. I'm finna put him outside real quick. Give me 1 second.
I got you. I'm not going to bet against Kyle Larson. I will just say that this is not the same as going to the car of tomorrow or going to Gen 6. I mean, when they went to the Gen 6, this is coming off the heels of Brian France saying, the car of tomorrow was my biggest mistake. He literally took the identity of each car and just stripped it out and said, you're all going to race the same car. There will be no advantages for each. And that the sport struggled. The aggressive drivers were good, like, Kyle Busch. He was good in the car of tomorrow, but as a whole, that car was kind of junk. It really was. And then you go to this car. They've fixed some things at Charlotte. I asked Bob Pockrass if they fixed the steering column issue, and he says yes. There was nobody complaining at Charlotte this last time of vibrations, but he also mentioned that there was tire issues. They were not big issues, but the tire they used at Charlotte was a very similar compound as the one that they used in the Charlotte race. At the oval, not the Roval. And with this car, they were seeing rear tire fall off in general, not just left or right, but more rear tire imbalance. And that's something they can work on, of course. It's a little odd to see, which I can understand. They tried 670 horsepower. I mean, you put more horsepower, you're going to get more rear input. So that's a possible reason why. But it's a little worrisome, to get that left rear and right rear cooking a little. That left rear usually doesn't do anything. It's usually just there. So, what do you have?
I made a point last week when I did the show was, because we're going from 550 at a lot of these intermediates, and we're jumping to 670 for next year. And I watched, I think it was David Land's video. soon as it broke news, he made a video on it. There was a few people going, "Well, it's not 900. It's not this. Not you're jumping up 120 extra horsepower." If in any other series, that's an entire different league. I mean, you
Yes.
think about GT racing. You got GT amateur and then like GT pro. That's a big difference. And like you said, if the tire fall off, I mean, they could. These drivers have been saying that these cars are harder to drive with the more horsepower, and a lot of the fans have been saying that's exactly what we want to see. That talent, we want to see that. But the thing we don't want to see is them driving the car and then all of a sudden that right rear tire, because it's maybe a softer compound compared to what they've or it's too soft and it starts to overheat and it blows up. Because I think any NASCAR fan knows a tire blowout is one of the hardest hits you could probably have in NASCAR.
It's
Because
so unexpected.
you have no control. Yeah. You'll be just going into the corner or maybe coming out of the corner, and all of a sudden it just goes pow. And that car is sent into a very bad hit. So I don't want to see that happen, but at the same time, I mean, the car's harder to drive. We'll get to get the drivers to showcase their talent. We've been hearing that a lot, especially this previous year, of drivers being like, "Hey, we want some more input. We want to be able to showcase what these cars can do." And this 550 is not doing it.
Well, it's a smaller spoiler, which I like. They're going from the 6 to 7 inch down to 4. And I know a lot of this stems from the Charlotte test. I mean, they got there with 550 and a 7 inch spoiler. And we're not talking a couple miles an hour. We're talking a second to a second and a half slower than the speeds they ran, in the spring race at Charlotte. And that really, it took a lot of drivers off guard. And I know there were surely complaints. I think the biggest complaint, maybe not necessarily speed, but when you're going at that slower speed, the drag is different. Even just a little, I'm sorry, even just a little, the cars are going to handle funny. You're used to a certain angle when you go into a turn and certain everything. And so when it's different, the drivers don't typically like it.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of spoiled like that. But so you go to this 70 horsepower and a smaller spoiler. I think one thing you're opening up is the draft, because the draft it's been huge at these places where we have the high downforce drag tracks. Now you're going to put it back in the hands of the drivers. They're going to have to wheel it around these corners like they used to before. I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, you went to Charlotte and it was all, tire wear and how well you get out of 4.
Mm-hmm.
The last few
Exactly.
years, everything has been, well, I'll be okay in the draft and we'll be able to stick with these guys. It's Daytona and Talladega on a small scale. It really is.
Yeah.
So I'm happy. I like the rules package. The only place I see it being an issue is when you get to tracks like New Hampshire. And I'll just go New Hampshire because the throttle sticking issue from decades ago still scares me. I mean, we lost Kenny Irwin, we lost Adam Petty because they had a similar, not quite 900 horsepower package, but 670 is not far off. And when these guys get into the turns, what if they blow a tire going that speed? It's not going to be a huge difference with a throttle sticking if it blows at the right time. So hopefully they find something there. The Safer Berries have done great in NASCAR, but I worry about heading into 1 and 3 at places like New Hampshire where you've really got to get slowed down. That wall comes quick when the turn is that sharp.
Oh yeah, it does.
Other than that,
I kind of have that same fear when it comes to that. But I mean, has been for 2020, and they said that they were going to go to 670. This probably wouldn't have been a concern, but after what we saw at Daytona, just a year or about to be 2 years ago now with Ryan Newman's scare, I mean, for a long time since 2001, there has never been, and I saw a statistic the other day. The Gen 5 is the only car to never have a death, and the only generation of car to never have a death.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's a cool statistic. And then, of course, now that we're going into the Gen 7, the Gen 6, again, we have 2 back-to-back generations and no deaths. But that was scary. That told me that there people could still die in these cars. Because I haven't seen a death in NASCAR. I've been a fan since I was a kid, but I didn't see Dale Earnhardt die. I watched videos of it, but I wasn't watching it live. So I've never seen it happen. And when Ryan Newman's accident happened, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
you could still get hurt. You could still die in these cars. No matter
I,
how
I,
much safe they make these cars, you could still die.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I look at the Austin Dillon Daytona wreck. If his car is uh, not bottom to the fence but top to the fence, we lose him because I mean it just sheared that
Mm-hmm.
car. Imagine what it would have done to the roof.
I
It
mean,
would
he
have
went
ripped the roof
from,
all the way down to
yeah, I
his
mean,
sternum. Gone.
yeah, I watched that wreck live. I mean, I genuinely thought he was dead. And he went from, I don't know, when he crossed the finish line, he's probably heading like 195. I mean, you're in the draft in the pack. And then when he got launched, I think the telemetry showed him at like 165. And when he hit the fence, it went from 165 to 0 and just spinning back out on the racetrack. I was like, he's dead. There's no question. He's dead. Like, there's no way he survived that. And for him to come out, I was like, you're kidding me. He
I, I
lived.
I couldn't believe he got up and walked. I mean, even if he goes unharmed from the fence, I mean, going from that speed to 0, I mean, you would normally black out from that. I mean, we're
Oh,
talking
yeah.
concussion. That's probably the equivalent of a Kimbo slice punch right to the top of your head. And dude just got up and walked away like, that was fun. I don't want to do it again. And
Yeah.
so, I was pretty shocked on that. Safety wise, they have some issues with this car. Ryan Newman, who does not have a ride, and it's probably a good thing. He's one of the advocates saying, he doesn't feel safe in this car. He doesn't like the safety numbers for this car. I know they're working on it, but it's going to be a slow process. From what I understand, there is an actual concern that they may not have enough cars throughout the season. Depending on wear and tear, it's different now. You used to build your own chassis. You used to be able to modify. But with this brand new car, everything's coming straight from manufacturer. Chevy, Toyota, Ford. Their plants are working overtime getting these cars ready. There is actually a concern somewhere during the season they might be short a few cars, and that's crazy to me. I mean, we've been looking at this Gen 6 car testing for months now. How have they not had a baseline to start at least making a few?
Yeah. I mean, that's an issue that we've never had to deal with before. I mean, like you said, teams built their bodies, they built their chassis all in the same roof, and now they're having to buy them. Well, that has its pros and cons, and I don't know how they'll deal with it. I mean, we might have instead of having a full field of cars, we might only have like 36 or 35, 34 because those teams don't have bodies for that week.
I heard a really cool story a long time ago about Buck Baker. He wrecked his primary car for a race. I don't remember what track it was, but he went to the local dealership and bought the same car on the lot. Because back then they were literally driving stock cars with the little modifications in the engine and some cool tires. So Buck Baker shows up at a dealership, gets a car, drives it, and finishes like third or fourth. From the dealership, he drove it into the track, did what he had to do, and still finished well in the race. I was like, that would never, like, you would never hear anything like that today. Not even
No.
the small tracks here. That's gone. That's
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah, you would never hear of that today. I mean, you literally wouldn't. Cars back then were, I mean, for that time expensive, but you could go like because of how they drove stock cars. It was race on Sunday, sell on Monday.
Yeah.
You can't do that with these cars anymore. They're so technical. I mean, they're stripped out. They have very complex roll cages, a lot of ECU mechanics. And I mean, you look at these cars, these new next gen cars are all like, aren't they made of carbon fiber? Like completely
Yep.
carbon fiber?
So they'll
That's
bounce back.
expensive.
Yeah. Well, they'll bounce back too, and I like that because the Gen 6 car, you touch it and it's done.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you got that fender bent out of shape. Well, we can't fix it. This car is designed for give and take more. You hit somebody in the bumper, it might dent, but it's supposed to bounce back.
Yeah. Maybe we'll get to see like more. Good Lord, what year was it? I think it was like one of Dale Jr.'s first Martinsville races, and he hit everything, and that front of the car was completely gone, but he was still out there running. We might see more of that if if they have to remove body panels, but
I
if
mean,
it's
that's
completely
cool.
made of carbon fiber.
That's cool. I like that. The idea back in the day, in the last, I would say even 10 years ago, you knew at Martinsville, if you could find a reason to tear off that right front fender, you did it
Hmm.
because that puts that cool air on that tire. And I don't want to say it was a cheat, but the rule book says you have to start with all the fenders. It's never said anything about it being required to have that fender. So I know there was a few races I was watching, and I was thinking, like, how many drivers do you think go out there and use that bumper just so they can take it off? Like, okay, cool, gone, cool,
It's smart.
yeah,
Hey, it's kind of the NASCAR way of thinking of if it's not in the rule book, use it. If it's
absolutely.
not said in the rule book, then there's no rule against it. Use it.
It's not even a gray area. It's a here's the box, just do everything outside of it and call it good.
Yeah. That's what NASCAR is known for. That's why fans love NASCAR. It's that this okay, so if they give us the rule book, I don't see this. Let's do that.
Yeah, it was literally founded on moonshine runners that were trying to make a living. I mean, it was founded by illegal acts, and I love that. I mean, I love hearing the old stories on how some of these guys ended up at NASCAR. I don't remember the name of the driver, but there's a guy that actually went to a NASCAR race. He was running from the law, and he ended up on the beach. And he saw it one year. I'm gonna have to find out who that was. He ended up on Daytona Beach one year for the beach races, and came back the next year and ran the race. He was that was so cool. I didn't even know that was there, but he was a moonshine runner and was like, "I'm in."
I'm sold. Give me a
Yeah,
car.
how cool would
That's
that be?
cool. I need to find. I need to look that up. That's interesting. I don't know about that.
I have a contact who is Russell Branham is his name. He's over like Daytona, Talladega. He's the coordinator for all the events at all those tracks. He'll drop me an email every once in a while with like something cool. Like I did an article on the Silver Fox, and then we backed it up with one about uh, Bobby Allison and his win that didn't count at Bowman Gray Stadium. And he was the one that gave me all the info on that whole situation. I had no idea. So I'm making all these calls, because Allison's it would be his 83rd win, and they
Mhm.
don't count it because it was supposedly not a NASCAR sanctioned race. But when you do the research and talk to a few people, kind of sounds like they were just a little upset with Allison because of his attitude about racing. So they just didn't want to give it to him. He had a feud with the Francis, I guess, from the beginning, and so it sounds like they kind of did him dirty. But right now he's tied with Darrell Waltrip on the all-time wins list for I think fourth. And with that win, he would be fourth by himself, fourth or fifth. I'll have to look that up again. But yeah, it was a pretty cool story. I had no idea. But Russell always comes up with crazy. So he's been around NASCAR since he was a kid.
Yeah.
He's personal friends with some of the Allisons. He knew the Silver Fox really well, and so he's just been around. He's a guy I tried to get on the show too, and he's like, I don't do
Uh,
stuff like that.
I've actually heard that story of Allison's non-win. I've actually heard a story about that. I don't remember much about it, and I might have this completely wrong, but you said it wasn't not a NASCAR sanction, and I think that is true. But I think he brought a car that was very illegal and beat everybody with it.
What
I,
happened was he was driving a car that so they had two different kind of cars. They had the cars that were NASCAR sanctioned, and then they had pony cars, is what they called them, which was
that's
like
right. Yeah,
Mustangs, Camaros, things like that. He had won the race with I believe, with a Camaro or a Mustang. But earlier in the year and later that year, both instances, people were given NASCAR wins with the same car under the circumstances that were the same. It's just one of those things that fell into the gray area, and NASCAR was like, "We're not giving it to you," because, like I said, I think Bill France Sr. was very much not a fan of the Allisons, and so he held it and said, "No, no, this is not a NASCAR win." And now Bobby has Alzheimer's, and
yeah,
he's getting kind of up there in age. And I had petitioned NASCAR to look into this, give him his win. The man's earned it, but I haven't heard back, and that's been a long time. I probably won't, but it would have been nice to get him that last win before he's gone, or before he even remembers doing it.
yeah.
So
All of our favorite legends are getting old.
mine is long gone. Dale Earnhardt, he's gone.
Yeah.
I was watching live when he hit the wall.
I wish I could watch him in his prime, just winning week in, week out, just doing his thing. But
Yeah,
YouTube helps.
it
There's a
does.
lot of
You
his wins on YouTube.
got to watch that last one at Talladega.
I love watching that. I love
He,
it.
he should have popped a tire. I mean, he was in the grass at one point trying to make a
Hmm.
pass on somebody, and then pulls back up and gets in front of Gordon. And hey, John Monroe, how you doing, man? Thanks for joining in. Uh, I don't know, man. He was, and he mostly drove one-handed. I hardly ever saw him with two hands on the wheel. He's just Sunday driving.
Yeah, it was nothing for him. He just did it. It's one of those cases of having just not even needing to really study it, learn it. It's just shut up, let me drive.
Yeah.
And that
And
was
so
just his mentality.
I'm gonna give you, this as homework, if you will,
Ooh,
and
yay,
I'm gonna do the
homework.
same thing. So next week's show, we're gonna come in here and we're gonna make a case to and against the 3 7-time champs. Who is really the greatest of all time?
Oh, oh no.
My very first show on Loose Lugs, I covered it. I didn't go into depth, and it was one of those. I was the only person on the show, so I was talking to myself.
Hmm.
Um, this time, I'm gonna have you to throw stuff at. So let's go at it. John says I wasn't an Earnhardt fan, but I respected for what he did for the sport. I did too, and I was a fan. I feel the same way about Jeff Gordon, because I was not a Gordon fan, but he brought NASCAR to Hollywood. I mean, he really introduced NASCAR to the West Coast, if you will. So I appreciate what Jeff did for the sport, and not just him. I mean, Jimmy Johnson was huge, but Gordon did it in a time when it was the end of the Richard Petty era. Petty had not been great for years. No
Hmm.
one was really opposing Earnhardt on a yearly basis. Every once in a while, somebody would come through and race him good. But when Earnhardt was healthy, he was expected to win the championship. So then Gordon comes along and really pushed hard. And it was great to watch the rivalry that they did have. So I feel the same for Gordon that you do for Earnhardt.
I think it was, and I'm probably not the only one that thinks like this, but the Earnhardt and Gordon rivalry probably put a lot of people, because you got to think of the time of that period, that mid '90s, late '90s, and even though not really in the early 2000s, but NASCAR was on a increase in popularity. So with Gordon being there and him having that rivalry he had with Earnhardt, it probably got way more eyes on it than it did, within it just be him alone.
I agree with that. I think you had to love Gordon, you had to hate Gordon. Really, even if you didn't like NASCAR, if you went to check the stats for something, um, his name was in there. I mean, not just for NASCAR, I mean, sports in general, the ESPYs. I
Yeah.
mean, how many ESPYs were given out before Gordon got one? I don't think, but maybe one or two for Athlete of the Year, especially, and Jeff Gordon won it. So, I mean, he put NASCAR in a position to grow exponentially to what they are now. The only other guy I can say, you know, put them on the map like that was Richard Petty. Um, he did a
Yeah.
lot for the sport, and I'll talk about that next week because our opinions are going to greatly differ. I will go ahead and give you an Easter egg that I don't have Richard Petty at number one. I have
Oh,
reasons, and I will explain, but I don't have Petty as number one. I think the level of competition is different.
that would have been my reasoning for not having him at number one.
The what he did for the sport obviously puts him as the greatest because he's the king of NASCAR. He may not be the king of everything in NASCAR. I mean, 200 wins, nobody's going to get that. But my thing is, how many wins would he have had in today's NASCAR? And I don't think he even cracks 80. I don't. The competition is much stiffer now.
That's true. And another thing you got to take into account, for a good majority of his career, they were running races almost every single week. There would be 60 races in a year.
Yeah.
And his family, I mean, they had a racing industry. It was an operation. They could ping pong before anybody else could.
Uh, John says he's from Berlin, Connecticut, home of Ryan Preece. Ryan Preece right now is out of a ride. I have not heard of him getting a new ride unless I missed it.
I haven't.
He was slated to drive the second JGT car, and they dropped it and sold the charter. I think that's the charter that 2311 ended up buying.
I think that's how that
Look
worked.
at that. Anyway, uh, but yeah, he's a good driver. I like Ryan Preece. I don't think he's going to get the fair shot that he deserves. Um, the ones that do are the ones that can bring in sponsors. And I use Dan Patrick as a perfect example. That girl could not drive. She couldn't,
It's true. Is
but she had 3 corporate sponsors more than willing to pay top dollar to be on her car, and everybody benefited from it, even Stuart Haas. Stuart should have fired her after the first year. He knew it wasn't going to work out, but the
her?
money you don't pass on that money.
Mm-mm. Not if you're a race team. You don't. I mean, if she was any other person, she was a rookie driver, no corporate spot, nothing. She just comes into NASCAR. Yeah, she'd have been gone that first year.
Yeah,
She'd have
I
no
would.
shot
There's no way I would have signed her. She wasn't great in Indy. She was average,
at
and
best.
yeah,
Average.
yeah, he is, and you do need cash to come with you. Honestly, you need at least 2 to 3 full-time sponsors. I mean, you got the big one on the hood, but you've got places to put other ones. It's too much money to try and go into this without corporate sponsorship. Yeah, she did.
Yeah,
She made money for Stuart Haas, and she made a lot of money for NASCAR too, with all the deals and court. Actually, GoDaddy's still they're still around. They're just not as big, but they do still sponsor K&N cars and things like that. Um, let's see, what else do we need to cover? Oh, so next week, talk about, have them ready. 1, 2, 3. If you want to put a fourth, I did a fourth on mine because it's not a 7-time champ, but I think you'd probably agree that the Silver Fox needs to be in that discussion. If you don't know a lot about him, check him out. He ended up retiring early for back problems, but he was on pace to catch Petty for a
Yeah.
while. I mean, he had the wins, he had the championships coming. He just had a lot of back problems, and the guy that I was talking about, Russell Branham, uh, actually knows personally all the stories that surrounded David Pearson, and you know how he got into NASCAR. Who was big for him, who helped him out, that kind of stuff. Yeah, glad you found us, John. We're here every week, Mondays at 6 Central, 7 Eastern. Sometimes we end up doing college football instead when it's really slow, but we're usually here. And speaking of college football, it is time to transition. We're going to do a half and half show tonight. We are going to talk just a couple minutes of college football. I'm excited for Friday.
What is Friday? Hey,
All
the
right.
guy who doesn't watch football, I don't know what's going on.
Well, I'll take the lead on this. It's the college football playoff semifinals. So you got Georgia and Michigan. That is your 7:30 Eastern game. And let's see, I don't even know what time Bama plays Cincinnati. I think it's later after that game. But it's getting close. We got 4 days. And there's like a lot of games between now and then that are good. Okay, so no, 3:30 Eastern is the Alabama-Cincy game. There's a lot of games between now and then that are good that I can't wait to watch. I'm hurting to get some Georgia football going.
I know everyone in my family is. After that whole event with Alabama.
Yeah. There's Tony.
What up,
There he
Jim?
is.
The foosball.
Let's do it.
All
Yeah,
right,
I don't know
Dustin.
nothing about NASCAR.
do it.
You would think being from one of the racing capitals of the world, I'd know something about racing. And I just know they make a lot of turns and they drive fast.
It's so odd. Dustin is in South Georgia, where football is life. It's God, and doesn't watch
Yes.
football. Tony is in Ohio,
From Indianapolis originally.
from Indianapolis, and does not watch NASCAR.
What?
I didn't really watch
Not even
basketball.
IndyCar?
Nope.
Well,
Never got it. Nobody in the family was really ever into it.
Huh. That is weird.
It is weird, and he's a Michigan State fan. Boo!
Oh.
I mean, I'm a Cowboys fan too, so I mean, I just rounded out at that point.
You can't pick all the worst teams. Pick somebody good.
I mean, I picked Dallas. They're just, like VHS good.
I actually don't have a problem with any of those teams. Michigan State, I was actually a Michigan State basketball fan for a while, just
Yeah.
because I don't really watch college basketball, like watch.
Mhm.
So I would root for Michigan State and North Carolina. Bandwagon or there, say it if you need to. But Michigan State football has always been interesting.
Mhm.
From the D'Antoni days to, I mean, now you guys have the right coach.
Yeah.
I called that a win-win when they hired him.
Oh, yeah.
So he's a good fit. He's got the mentality that you want in a head coach. He has NFL pedigree.
Mhm.
He doesn't take anybody's slack.
Yep.
He's going to put the best players on the field, no matter if you're a freshman or a senior. I mean, he's exactly what you want in a coach.
And
Who
I mean,
do you
he's
guys
got
play in
them.
the bowl?
Huh?
Who do you guys play in the bowl?
I don't really remember off the top of my head, to be honest with you.
I've already forgotten too.
Uh,
Hey,
Let's
shut up,
see.
our guy.
They play in the Peach Bowl. I know that, and they play against Pitt.
That's right. That's going to be a good game.
This is gonna be a very good game.
Pitt
And
surprised this year.
And it sucks because Kenneth Walker is declaring for the draft, so he's not going to be playing in the Peach Bowl. So,
Is he even old enough?
Mhm.
I thought he was a freshman.
Is he? I'm pretty sure.
That's a blow. He did really good this year. I mean, you can't
did.
blame him if he does.
He's a junior, so yeah, he can declare.
Holy cow! I thought he was a freshman.
Nope. He didn't really bust on until this year. His last couple years, this is crazy. 2019 and 2020, he got exactly 579 rushing yards. His touchdowns went from 4 to 13. And his attempts, everything like that, have gone up. So he didn't really burst onto the scene until this year. So that's probably why.
He was big this year, though. I mean, he carried Michigan State for most of the year.
Yeah, let's see. He had 263 attempts for just over 1,600 yards and 18 touchdowns, averaged about 6 yards a carry. So, I mean, that's phenomenal numbers.
Yeah, he was a monster. And what game was it that I was like, it wasn't Ohio State because that was not a good game.
It was Michigan.
Michigan.
He had 197 rushing yards on Michigan and 5 touchdowns. He destroyed Michigan.
Anyway, talking football in general, Michigan State does play Pitt, like you said. I was a little shocked that Pitt was an overrated team to some going into this bowl. Some people are saying that 12 is too high for them and they don't deserve top 20. It's like, you look at their resume, Pitt played some good teams this year.
Mm-hmm.
They had a Heisman candidate for a quarterback who's probably going to be the first quarterback taken off the board this year.
For sure.
I don't know, overrated is the right word. I mean, they're not, the pedigree that Ohio State has had.
Mm-hmm.
But they had a really good season.
I don't know if I mean, people say they're overrated. I mean, if you really look at it, how much value are you putting into Pitt then? And how bad has the rest of, well, not really even how bad, but how shocking has the rest of the college football layout been? You have Ohio State with 2 losses. You have Oregon losing to 2 unranked teams. You have Bama, pulling out close games against a second string broken quarterback. You have them losing to Texas A&M. So I mean, this has just really been a crazy year for college football. So I mean, to say they're overrated, I mean, 12 isn't exactly a bad spot. I can't really sit here and tell oh yeah, these are for sure like the top 10, top 15 teams that deserve to absolutely be in here. Like, really, once you get past 4, all of it's like, you could really make an argument for any of them to move up after 4.
Yeah, I mean, this was the first year, in my opinion, that the 4 teams that did make it truly deserve to make it.
Mm-hmm.
You can make an argument almost every year that, well, this team got screwed or this team didn't belong. I mean, I'm going to be blunt, but I don't think Notre Dame deserved it this year or the 2 other times that they did make it.
Nope.
I didn't think they had a good team then. They make their own schedule. They're not in a conference. And I've said this a bunch. If they want the recognition of being elite, join a conference, win it, play the elite.
Yeah. I mean, what was it? I think, it was last year when they played in the ACC. I don't think they won it, did they?
No, they beat Clemson in the regular season without Trevor Lawrence, and then came back and lost in the ACC title game. If they won the ACC, that year playing Trevor Lawrence, then I could see them, having a foot to say we did play the best, but they barely beat them without Trevor Lawrence. And they gave up 400 passing yards to the quarterback that Clemson has this year, Ugalele.
I'm not even going to try to enunciate that last name. That last name is crazy.
He's turned out to be a wash.
Yeah.
I mean, complete wash. I don't even think he's going to be on the team next year.
Yeah. And think about it too. If you're Clemson, Clemson kind of struck gold twice. Look at what Green Bay did. You happen to get a great star in Brett Favre. and then you get Aaron Rodgers. And then same thing with Clemson. You had Deshaun Watson, and then you were lucky enough to have Trevor Lawrence fall in your lap, not so far afterwards. So, I mean, really Clemson got blessed twice with that. So, yeah, like you said, I don't see this quarterback for them being on the team next year, especially with how badly Clemson fell off and so quickly.
We also figure they're replacing 2 coordinators,
Mm-hmm.
both offensive and defensive. Their athletic director is now the AD at Miami.
Yep.
But field wise, Klubnik comes in. He's the highly recruited, touted true freshman. They're going to give him more of a chance than they would normally because this team does not have an identity. And if Klubnik gives them even some sort of a vision, they're going to play him.
Oh, yeah.
So I would expect to see him in the portal before the end of this year, not going into next year, moving forward. Dustin, they're in Georgia. Have you been to Athens? Have you seen the campus up there?
I think I've passed by it maybe once or twice, but I've never seen the campus.
I've been a lot, and you got to go. It's truly one of the greatest campuses. I've been to a lot of universities. It's probably the coolest campus. It's there's nothing in Athens other than the university. There's 2 blocks of restaurants off campus, like next to it, and past that, it looks like they're still trying to build from the 80s. But the campus is really nice. If you get a chance, just if you go up there for the day, go up, go eat at Mellow Mushroom, run into some players. You're gonna, because they're always there. Just check it out, because I would love to go to school there. Just like I'm sure Tony would love to go to Lansing.
Yeah, I'd go to Lansing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they don't have a law program, so Michigan State is unfortunately out as far as getting a law degree. Guess I'll just have to stay home and go to IU.
IU?
Mm-hmm.
Indiana?
Yep. Down in Bloomington. Hey, they're sports wise garbage. Except for women's and men's basketball. Law school wise, it's one of the top law schools in the country.
I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
When I think law school, I always think of like Duke or
Harvard or like Princeton, like the
Harvard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Indiana University is known for 3 things: nursing, law, and business.
I thought you were going to say frat parties, because that would have been on my list too.
No, that's Ball State. Ball State is completely known for frat parties.
That's in Muncie, right?
Yes.
I have been right by. I have family in Muncie.
Okay.
So when I was a little kid, we went a few times, and I remember passing a college. I didn't want to be like, yeah, Ball State, and be wrong, but I was pretty sure that I'd seen Ball State there.
Yeah. You've got Ball State. You also have U of I, which is the Greyhounds, but they don't have a Division I football team. You have ISU, the Indiana Southern University, university that Larry Bird went to, or Indiana State. I think it's Indiana State, actually. Anyway, it's the Sycamores all the way down in Evansville, Indiana, so right at the little tail down there at the bottom. You have Purdue up north, and then you have Butler. Butler's like in the middle of the South.
Butler's a big basketball school.
Yes, they don't have a football program, actually. They are only a basketball school.
I think they might get one soon.
I could see it. I mean, I haven't heard anything because, to be honest with you, growing up, everybody like jumped on the Butler bandwagon when they went into the NCAA tournament in 2010 and 2011. And both times they got beat by UConn, and I was super ecstatic that they did. Growing up in Indiana for the longest time, it was like I couldn't stand people from Indiana. It was like, you guys are so just trash. And now afterwards, I'm like, you guys are still kind of trash, but you're my trash.
You're my kind of trash.
Exactly.
Have you guys ever been to Georgetown?
Georgetown.
in DC.
See, yeah.
Yep, I lived there.
Oh my God, have you been down the staircase that was in the movie?
Yes.
Oh man,
A lot of
it's
time
so
been down the
cool.
staircase. So I was stationed there for almost 5 years. Stationed right there.
Oh, so you were at Walter Reed?
Nope, I was at Bowling Air Force Base,
Oh, okay.
and then worked at the Pentagon for 2.5 years.
Who was the president at the time?
Came in under Obama and then was under Trump for the first 2 years.
Ever meet either one of them?
Both.
Wow, awesome.
Nice.
I have pictures with Trump. I have pictures with Secretary Mattis, all of the military leadership. Got to meet Gerard Butler. Got to meet the entire Baltimore Ravens football team. Got to meet a few Boston Celtics players, but I don't remember their names off the top of my head.
I saw this video with Gerard Butler where he's talking about how he came up with the "This is Sparta" chant.
Yeah,
it's so funny because he really gets into it. He's like,
mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was funny. Yeah, he completely just did that. Like, he's like, yeah, I just want to see what it would be like.
And it's one of the most like I say it around the house sometimes. If the kids are fighting, I'm like, "This is Sparta," you know.
Now, do you actually Spartan kick them at times, or just depends on the day?
No, I don't like sleeping on the couch.
Fair enough.
Don't do that.
Fair enough.
Anyway, college football, yeah, that thing. Who are you picking for the Final Four here? Who's making it in the national title?
I'll be honest with you. Unfortunately, I think it's just going to be a repeat of the SEC championship. I think it's Bama versus Georgia. I think Cincinnati will surprise a lot of people. I think they will give Bama a run for their money, considering how Bama has kind of struggled. But Bama will have had basically 2 weeks to prepare against Cincinnati. They've definitely been watching a lot of film. Nick Saban will definitely have them ready to go. I'm going to say 35-21 Bama. And then for Michigan versus Georgia, I think this is one of those Michigan's going to get exposed because Michigan's going to want to run the ball, and Georgia is definitely going to get back to what they do the best. They're going to jam the inside. They're going to stop that run, and it's going to be extremely difficult for Michigan to overcome that, especially considering Michigan's pass game is not what it used to be. So that one I have a little bit more lopsided. I'm going to say 42-14 Georgia.
All right, Dustin, who you got?
Whatever he said, or whatever he said, it's basically the same thing. When he started talking about who Georgia's going up against, and he said they're running game, I was like, Georgia defense. That's the only thing I could think of is they're going to come out and they're going to expose the crap out of them because that's what they do. We have probably the best defense in all of college football when it comes to everybody we're going up against. It's just sad that we didn't get to really show it off against Alabama, but like he said, it's going to be Georgia versus Alabama. I just have gut feeling.
It's a good gut feeling, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to go opposite of you on this though with Bama. I think they really show Cincy why they shouldn't be there. And it's not fair. You know, they're undefeated. Mm-hmm. They deserve to be there. But they're going to show them why they should not be there. They struggled against teams that they should have beat by 35 or 40 to be a college football team or a playoff team. So I think this is going to be – I'll put it this way. I don't think Bama punts more than once, if they punt once. You know, I think they score on almost every drive. I think their defense – I think Will Anderson – will not be blocked. I would say he breaks the college football playoff sack record.
Wow.
And probably this is like a 52-55 to 6 or 7 game. I don't see these guys matching up well. You put strength on strength, speed on speed. I mean, if this was like Madden, we're talking like the 90s Cowboys versus today's New York Giants. It's close.
That's rough.
And it's not fair to say that about Cincy. I know that. They don't recruit the same. They don't train the same. These teams are in two different leagues. And I think they're just going to show that. For Georgia, another strength on strength. Like you said, Michigan's going to come out and they're going to try to run the ball. They're going to make Georgia's defense play gap control, which they're very good at. You're going to see McNamara make more throws in this game than he's made all year. I don't know if he completes too many is the problem. And if they're smart, they're not game planning on how to run the ball against Georgia. They're game planning on how to make Georgia's defense allow passing yards.
Yeah.
And I don't see that happening. Hello, Mom and Dad. Nice to see you guys.
Now, do you see Michigan kind of doing like what they did in the regular season, where they would alternate between McNamara and the backup quarterback, because they would have him even come in on a few plays, whether it was wildcat or just running plays, or even if it was just a short slant pass, they would have him come in and make plays. Do you think Michigan would have more of a chance if they do kind of a 2 quarterback style offense to kind of keep Georgia unprepared as far as who they need to go after?
Well, if Jim Harbaugh is a smart coach, you may not even see too much of McNamara early. You might see him put in that backup. I don't even know his name, honestly.
I don't know.
And see what you can get out of him. Because these are two different teams. I mean, you played Ohio State and you played them well, but you ran the ball well.
Yep.
You're not going to do that against Georgia.
Nope.
If you don't have a quarterback that can stretch the field, it's going to be a long night. I mean, you let these guys, pin their ears back. They're going to get home. And the great thing about having Jordan Davis, I mean, he's a wall. Quite simply, he's a wall. You have to double team him or he's going to hurt you. And when you double team him, guys like Devontae Wyatt and Jalen Carter wreak havoc. There's not one guy you have to plan against for this Georgia defense. It's 11.
Yeah.
Every single play. And, I don't know what happened in the Bama game. I want to chalk it up to a hangover or some kind of bug because they just didn't play like they have at all this year. But I think they get back on track here. And I think offensively they're going to put up 30, maybe 28.
Tell me this, because I'm a little bit of a kind of a conspiracy crazy theorist. Do you think Georgia almost kind of blew the game for the SEC championship because they didn't want to go into the playoffs with basically no other real competition and just walk through and then have everybody say, oh, well, Georgia only did it because they finally beat Bama and Bama wasn't in the playoffs. That was regular season Bama. And do you think if they have a rematch for the championship, which I think most of us probably agree they will, do you think this is the Georgia that we've seen all regular season?
That is a question for Porter Hayes on Wednesday because I have the answer. He has a really good answer.
Okay.
And so I'm going to leave that to him because I felt the same way. I felt something was up. He basically laid it out for me. So we'll ask him that on Wednesday on Blown Coverage. And matter of fact, let's open the show that way.
Okay.
He'll lay it out for you exactly how he feels, exactly what he thinks happened. And you'll be like, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
I think we are pretty much out of time, though.
Yeah.
I believe you have another show to do, Mr. Busy Tony.
I do. It's Monday night. It's always busy.
We'll get to it. It was a good episode. I enjoyed this. It was good to be back. I missed a few weeks. And we will be here again on Monday for Loose Lugs. And then, like I said, Wednesday for Blown Coverage, same time, 7 Eastern, 6 Central. Until then, Dustin Lewis, thanks for covering for me last week. I appreciate that.
Always.
Tony, as always, running the show, getting us where we need to be. He's the coach.
No, I wish.
He's that two-a-day coach that you don't like. All right, man. We'll see you guys.
All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we're making a plays. We're talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety topics, never the same. All presentation.